I will call this meeting to order. Ask for a roll call, please.
Roll call, Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Here.
Councilmember Jennings.
Here.
Councilmember Canes,
Here.
Councilmember Miller,
Here.
Mayor Garrett. Mr. Pro Tem, you have a call.
I'm not gonna, well, ask for a motion to Mary Garrett think she's on the way. But invite all those who are interested in joining me with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A motion to approve today's agenda. Motion to approve the agenda for today.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jennings,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cantor,
Yes.
Councilmember Canes.
Yes.
Councilmember Miller,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you. Okay, next we'll move on to public comments. These are public comments for items that are on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, and if the speaker gives their name, we would appreciate it. Anybody who wishes to make public comment can do so now.
Is it on Zoom also? Is it on Zoom?
My name is Jason Hammond. My comment is that I have faith in all of you to review the applicants, the information they provided to you about their resumes, their past experience, the information that some of us were able to glean from them by participating in the meet and greet last night. And I recognize that you all put a lot of work and effort into the questions that you put together in preparing for these interviews in order to assess the appropriateness or the ability or the best fit for the candidates that are going to be put in front of you today to move the city forward. And I really want to say is I just appreciate all the effort that you're putting into this. And I'm really excited that we are finally getting to this point to put leadership and the staff in place. That has been, while our interim administrators have been doing a fantastic job, we really need a permanent person to do this job full time. And I recognize that you all see that and want to move this along as efficiently as possible. So thank you. And I'm really looking forward to the decision that you come to once you've had a chance to review all the candidates and their abilities and their best fit for the city. Thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, then move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the interviewing of candidates. It starts at 2:30. Starts with Ken Marten first. And so if you can grab a pen, that'd be great.
We'll add them back at the end after 14 at this time.
Thank you.
What happened to the budget question?
It's on there. It's number 5. You're on the right list. You
Yeah, but it's not.
No,
Okay.
you're here.
Should I have a sheet?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for being here today.
When are you gonna jump right into questions, or you get the opportunity to introduce yourself?
Like 1 minute, I guess. Just so we can
Yeah.
answer questions.
Okay. So what we're gonna do is just give you an opportunity about 1 minute. You have to introduce yourself.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Well, hi, folks. I'm Ken Martin. I am the village manager or administrator in Bingham Farms. Thank you for having me here. Some of you may know me as being a former employee of this community. And I wouldn't mind being a community, an employee again of this community. So I have a background in public service that stretches into public education as well as working for communities, and a master's degree in public administration. Prior to that, I worked in newspapers for many years, which I consider almost another form of public service. Well, gosh, I guess I'll let the questions and answers kind of fill in the blanks. I think did a pretty good job of having this discussion yesterday as well. I look forward to today's questions. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'll just jump right into it. Tell us about your employment history and professional qualifications. How have they prepared you to meet the challenges of serving as city administrator for the city of Lathrup Village? And is there anything you would like to tell us about your qualifications that you have not already sent us that was in your resume?
I think everything is included in the resume. My qualifications include, again, having the master's degree in public administration, being a member of the Michigan Municipal Executives, being a member of the Michigan Association of Planning. Prior to working for 4 years, it'll be 4 years in August that I worked for the village of Bingham Farms. I worked here for 3 years in various capacities of, I think, what I would consider steady promotion with increased responsibility. Prior to that, I worked in a public school that was an alternative education situation with at-risk youth. Prior to that, I worked in newspapers covering communities about the size of Lathrup Village, frankly. And public affairs was a primary focus of my reporting. Prior to that, I worked in a couple of law firms as a legal assistant for 8 years. And that takes me back, going backwards, that takes me back to getting a degree in sociology from Grand Valley. I think that covers the kind of the gist.
Thank you.
So what's your philosophy regarding community engagement and involving residents in the decision-making process, keeping residents informed regarding critical issues in the community? And then please provide examples of how your philosophy has been implemented in your most recent position.
Well, communication is absolutely key to any kind of engagement of this nature. And you have all kinds of tools at your disposal as a community, as an administrator and as council, you have all kinds of tools. Primarily would be your website, your newsletter, which I was just reading, and which I used to produce here for the village or for the city when I worked here. Any kind of communication like that is extremely important. It's just absolutely crucial. And coming from a communications background, to me, that's second nature. It's not just talking or writing and producing things. It's also hearing people, listening to people. That's really half the battle or half the task is keeping your ears open and listening to other points of view. And really there. I mean, so as an example of this, in Bingham Farms, almost since I started, these projects take years to complete sometimes. Almost since when I started, there was a third week that I was there. We had a meeting regarding a planned unit development, PUD, on a vacant piece of property on Telegraph Road. Lots of folks were concerned about having development in this property. It will be an assisted living facility in an office building. Telegraph is full of office buildings. So there wasn't a lot of controversy about that, but the assisted living facility was concerning to a lot of folks. So that went from the first meeting to a whole series of meetings with the design review board, the planning commission, and the village council before it was finally approved. And all of those meetings are noticed. All of those meetings had a series of public hearings and public comment. The community was thoroughly heard. Meetings with the applicant to the point where they adjusted some of their elements of the properties to accommodate the concerns of the community. All of that stuff has to be done, it runs through the office of the administrator. The administrator doesn't do things by themselves. I mean, the council approves things. The administrator shepherds the project through. That's really what this is all about, is the council making the policy decisions and the administrator and the staff executing those decisions. This is weird. I'm seeing myself on the screen up there. It keeps catching my eye. There we go again. Anyway, okay, so that's my philosophy, and that's an example.
Okay, different people respond to information in different ways. Describe a specific situation that required you to communicate with a diverse group. How were they diverse? How did you adapt the information to the needs of the individuals? Describe a situation where you failed to communicate appropriately to a group. What did you do wrong, and what corrective action did you take to prevent future occurrences?
Well, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to remember everything that you asked me to say, to
Break it
answer.
into two parts. First part and the second part.
Yeah, there was a lot there. Okay.
So I have to say this. Bingham Farms is not exactly what I would consider a diverse community. There isn't a lot of diversity there. I mean, there's frankly a lot of Caucasians, and upperly mobile ones at that. But I wouldn't really call it a diverse community economically or any other way. So it's hard for me to draw on a situation that's accurate from there, from my current experience, my current situation, I guess. Gosh. So I've worked in a lot of different situations where diversity abounds. I work in this community, and this community has a much greater sense of diversity than say Bingham Farms does. But I might draw on examples from when I worked at Westwood Community Schools. I was a project manager at an alternative high school that catered to at-risk kids, and most of the kids in my cohort, which is what we called them, my classroom, if you will, were Arab Americans, and I dealt with their parents and them all the time about education and motivation, meeting with them in their homes, meeting with them in the learning lab. They came up with all these cool buzzwords. Learning lab in the cohort, we would meet and discuss things. I mean, that was, to me, that's diversity. And that might be the most diverse situation that I've been in. That was 3 years worth of time. I wouldn't say, and I say most of the kids were Arab Americans, not all of them. I had African Americans and Latino kids, students, and white kids. I mean, it was, frankly, it was a real mix, and frankly, it was a lot of fun. Let's get to the mistake part of the question. What can you tell me? Could you read that again?
Yes, I can. Describe a situation where you failed to communicate appropriately to a group. What did you do wrong, and what corrective action did you take to prevent future occurrences?
I'll use this one as an example. I used to be on the Homeowners Association Board of Directors in my neighborhood, and we rolled out I live in Detroit, and in the historic district, and we decided, because the city wasn't going to do it, rolled out a sidewalk improvement program of our own. And there were some mistakes on my part when presenting this at the annual meeting, and then subsequently in the community newsletter, on how the association was going to compensate our homeowners. And I had to own up to that mistake and correct it. And that correction involved visiting people individually. This is all well before COVID, so no one had a problem with me going in their home and explaining the error and apologizing. And making sure, and this was rather embarrassing for me because I worked in a newspaper for so long. And you're used to when you roll out a program, you got to cover the who, what, where, when, why, and how. The thing that I forgot to cover was the how much. And rookie mistake, frankly. Wouldn't have made it if I was still writing for a newspaper, but I think I made it when I was trying to implement the program. And frankly, just don't forget that. It doesn't happen again. Interesting question. Thank you.
Can you share an example of a decision you made upholding policy or regulation that you knew would be unpopular with your superiors in the organization? Describe the decision you had to make and what you had to do to prepare for any fallout.
Well, in Bingham Farms, my superiors are the village council. So they typically make the decisions and I carry out the policy. And I frankly haven't had any disharmony in that regard. So I guess, goodness. I would have to go back to, I'd have to go way back. When I worked for newspapers, we had to write some unpopular stories that frankly the publisher didn't really like to hear. So the publisher and the editor would take this stand and they would write some editorials that were unsigned. How editorials are in newspapers. And as a staff writers, we had to cover topics. In this case, it was a rather unpopular development that on Woodward Avenue that actually was approved by the council. And this is in Royal Oak. Trying to think of exactly what year it was, but this is going to escape me. Anyway, we had to cover as reporters the story repeatedly, over and over again because it's ongoing, and it rankled the feathers of the publisher and editor because it was the reporting was against the flow of their stand. But that's just reality, and people just have to learn to live with it. No one got fired over it. No one got disciplined or anything of that nature. It just went on. I hope that answers the question.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you please provide an example of one specific challenge you faced in the creation of a city budget? What did you do and what were the results of your actions?
Well, in Bingham Farms, I hate to keep deflecting here. In Bingham Farms, the treasurer, who was a separate appointee, handles the budget. I don't do the budget in that community. I haven't done it in 4 years now. The last time I actually did a budget was when I was working for this community, and I did I wrote the DDA's budget. So it's almost too specific for me to answer.
Did you have any issues with the budget you wrote here?
No, I did not. Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Please describe your experience in the areas, in these following areas. What is the extent of your experience and did it cover the following? Okay. Please describe your experiences in these areas, supervision of staff, personnel and labor relations, grant applications, and I'll repeat these. Grant application and administration, intergovernmental relations, public works, information technology, community engagement, and program development. So what is your extent of your experience in each one of those, and if you have any?
Okay, so yes, I do have experience. So I have a staff of 4, and I manage them on a daily basis. That is my experience, and that's been for the last 4 years. The next question was labor relations.
Personnel and labor relations.
Okay, so in Bingham Farms, the village contracts with the village of Franklin, which is in the same township, to provide police protection. And we've had 2 rounds of contract negotiations with the police union in Franklin. And in both cases, I was on the management team that negotiated the contract. So one just occurred in January of 2022. And then that was at the expiration of a 3-year contract, which would have been in late 2019. So I have direct experience with that sort of aspect. Here, I believe you have one labor union, maybe it's 2. You have police and you have perhaps a command staff association. Is that right? Okay. All right. What was the next?
The next one was grant application and administration.
Okay. We have written a series of grants, one for through the county for planning for stormwater management that's pending. Wrote a grant for collection of compost, like household waste, not or like compostable waste, not just recycling, but things like peelings and that kind of thing. That's still pending as well. So I don't know if those are going to be successful or not. And this is kind of fun. This is when I was working with my neighborhood association, I wrote a grant from the Michigan Architectural Foundation for the replacement of our historic streetlights. That was successful. What's the next? On your list?
Intergovernmental relations.
Well, all right. So Bingham Farms is a community of contracts. We have contracts with a whole bunch of entities to cover most of our services. As I mentioned, police is handled through Franklin. Our fire is handled through a private company called the Bingham Franklin Fire Department. Our building services are covered through Southfield. We have our water comes from Saqua. The maintenance of the system is the Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner's office. We have RCOC roads that run through the village. So I say all this because intergovernmental relations is second nature to my job in Bingham Farms. I mean, I'm managing these contracts all the time, and what does that mean? That means talking to people, communicating with them all the time about various service elements, whether it's replacing water mains that break or regular maintenance of a road or requesting service for a police or fire situation. I am constantly in contact with the folks that are part of those other intergovernmental organizations. What was the next on your list?
Public Works.
Public Works. So we are working right now on a plan for road resurfacing in Bingham Farms that is ongoing with our engineering consultant, which is Hubble Roth and Clark. Our consultants or our vendor or contractor for water and sewer is the Oakland County Water Resource Commissioner's office, which I just mentioned. And I am in constant contact and working with them about improvements. Although I will say this, the system there is really young. The water and sewer were put in 1980. Yours was a lot earlier than that. I know that. So we don't have the issues and replacement issues that you might be experiencing here. And as I recall, when I worked here, we had 5 water main breaks in one time. So I know that there are unique challenges to Lathrup's situation. What is the next one on your list?
Information technology.
Information technology. I don't want to call this a weak point, but no, it really isn't. I was thinking like social media platforms because I stopped at Facebook. I don't have Instagram. I don't tweet. I don't do Snapchat or whatever. So I'm just Facebook. But when it comes to the village website, we have the same contractor that you all use here for it's revised. And I maintain that website. I also maintained it when I was working here. And some of the pictures that I took and uploaded are still on your website today. So I'm aware of that, but then there are elements of information technology that are just too complex for the average person. You need, I think you're still using IT right here. We have a smaller company in Bingham, but I understand the principles. I understand what needs to be done. What is next on your list?
Community engagement.
Community engagement. So we have in Bingham, we do a quarterly newsletter. We have our regular meetings that are posted and all that kind of thing on the website. That's really the go-to. The village does not have a Facebook page of its own. But I will say this is kind of fun. The village never held in any kind of festival or anything of that nature in its history. So last year, myself and a couple of volunteers, we put together the first ever Bingham Farms Family Festival. It was a lot of fun. We're doing it again this year. It's in August 13th. If no one's busy that day, it's 11 to 3. It's a Saturday. But that was really a lot of fun. We had all kinds of great folks coming out. In addition to that, I mean, on a daily basis, I'm getting phone calls. I'm dealing with people. And I even keep a log. I started that when I was working here. I keep a log of every contact I have with who it is, when it was, how it was done, whether it was email or phone call or voice, just left the voicemail or text now. So who it was, when it was, roughly what the topic was, and if it was just how lengthy it was, if the length matters. So I think that's really important, I think. And I try to keep track of that kind of thing. Get to know a lot of people real quick that way.
My last one is program development.
Program development. Okay. Well, let's see. Let's see. What kind of program?
I guess it could be exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Family, something I guess to engage
Okay.
the community.
Well, so that would be one. The festival would be one. Another one that's a little more involved. I lifted this idea right from Lathrup when I left here and went to Bingham. Bingham has 29 or 30 office buildings on Telegraph Road, a handful on 13 Mile. That's our business district. And inside those buildings are a bunch of businesses. We didn't know who they were really, because they don't face the street or anything. So we implemented a business license program. A lot of communities have this, but this took some time. It wasn't just, I think this is a good idea. I had to present it to council. Council gave me the nod to continue to investigate further. We did. We passed an ordinance, and then we unrolled the program. So we've had pretty good compliance even through COVID. We charge a fee. Basically, it's $50 for an initial license and $35 thereafter on an annual basis. And our compliance, we have a few people that pay under protest, and they write that on their renewal fee, a renewal page. But so be it. This way, we can track the business day population. We can track zoning compliance, which is really important. We can track what the police and fire needs could be in the business community or the business area, and other things as well. So, that was a successful rollout.
Thank you.
Before I ask the next question, just one real quick follow-up question on that. When you talk about the grants, the stormwater management grant and the compost grant, did you actually write those grants, or was it a team? Or
It's myself and the consultants. So it's the engineering consultants, Hubble, Roth, and Clark, and then the composting ones. That was all me.
Great, thanks. All right, the next question. The city administrator position requires you to respond to many requests in a short period of time. How have you assured promptness, accuracy, and courtesy under these conditions? What specifically have you done in the past, so techniques, systems, and so on, to ensure effective communication and follow-up for both you and those working for you?
My philosophy is that everything is responded to within 24 hours. Certain things that can be done a lot quicker than that. But that, and that doesn't mean that every solution is had in 24 hours or that everything is fixed in 24 hours. That simply means that we are on top of it. We are addressing it. When someone calls me and leaves me an unpleasant voicemail, I don't ignore it for 3 days or 5 days, whatever, or sends an email. I mean, it goes, it gets answered. And sometimes the answer is not what people want to hear. But, you know, if the answer is based in policy, there's really not a lot of argument. I mean, here it is, here's the ordinance, here's the policy. Just yesterday, we have a ditch and culvert system in Bingham, just like you have here. And a woman had emailed me and asked about replacement of her culvert because it's rising, as you all know that happens. And it's starting to, a crack is developing in her driveway. And right in our ordinances, culvert replacement is up to is a responsibility of the homeowner. And I had to share that with her. She was seeking relief. There is no relief. And that's frankly can be an unpleasant thing to tell someone, but I mean, I can't, there's nothing I can do. Here's the ordinance and here's what it says. So I basically cut and paste in that regard. But that's my philosophy. And I asked my staff to do the same thing. It's a 24-hour situation, quicker if possible. Mhm.
Please describe your experience in the area of economic development and share examples of projects or initiatives you were directly involved in this area.
Well, I was the economic development director for this community for a while. Again, some things are a matter of shepherding things that come to you through the processes of planning approval and that kind of thing. One example, and I'm not taking credit for this, but it just happened to come while I was on my watch, was that gas station that's being built down south of 696. That started when I was here. I can't remember the guy's name now, but I think it's Tariq. We went through that process, and I think even after I left, even after I left this community to work in Bingham, there was a meeting that week, and I came back to, it was a planning commission meeting, and I came back to sit with them and sort of help them through the process. I think that was the public hearing meeting, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if action was taken, but I mean, that's the kind of, I mean, some of it's beating the bushes and recruiting folks to come to your community, but some of it is just shepherding the projects that do come your way. And that's the good example. This is really fun. This is going to take some time. So you all know what COVID has done to the world of work. It's just tossed it, put everything upside down. People, communities or companies have come up with all kinds of intricate ways of successful ways of production while people are telecommuting, working from home, that kind of thing. And that means that in offices, there's less of a need for space. And if you have a bunch of office buildings in your business district that have gone from 90% vacancy to 60%, that's a concern. So there are a couple of things that we've done. One is, this is sort of fortuitous. We were working on our master plan update at the time of COVID. And the pandemic kind of delayed the process a little bit. But we took the opportunity to add language to the master plan that includes the possibility of mixed use projects. So we have a bunch of office buildings and they're all offices. That's it. There's no mixed use like you might see in like downtown Royal Oak or Birmingham or something where you have office on the first floor or retail on the first floor, office, and then resident. We don't have that, but we're willing to look at it. And I think ultimately that's going to happen. So sooner, at some point, one of these office buildings just will not be able to sustain itself with a low vacancy or low occupancy rate like that. But so we've tweaked the master plan to show that this is something that we're looking at doing in our business district. Secondly, one of the office managers or building managers came to me about a year ago and said, I have a prospective tenant. It's a college. Is that allowed in the zoning ordinance? And we do not allow educational uses. We did not. So I said, well, that's kind of silly. Because at one time that might have been the case. That might have been natural. But when I got my master's degree, I got it from Central, but I didn't go to Mount Pleasant for classes. I took my classes at their various global campuses, which are in office buildings all throughout Metro Detroit, Warren, Southfield, Dearborn, Detroit itself. So this is not necessarily a new idea, but I thought, well, why can't we do that? So I suggested it to the Planning Commission, held a public hearing, didn't seem to be any resistance. It went through to the council. And so the zoning ordinance is amended to now allow for educational uses. And just yesterday, I stamped approved a furniture layout plan for the Hondros College of Nursing, which is going into the building. It will be open in this fall. It's a private school. Most of their campuses are in Ohio and Indiana. This will be their first Michigan campus. So I'm really, I mean, that's a great example. They haven't opened yet, but I'm assuming they're going to. I know that the construction's been done. They pulled all the permits. So that went from concept to completed idea, and it took about a year. So I'm very proud of that. And that would be it'd be one example of economic development.
Please describe a major accomplishment you achieved in your current or most recent position. What did you accomplish? How specifically did you go about making this happen? What steps did you take?
Well, I'd like to rely on my last answer. That really, so maybe top four would be the PUD that I just described to you earlier, the business licensing program, the educational use, and the festival. I mean, those are all really, I think those are all feathers in the cap. Here, when I worked here, one of the things that I really am proud of, I'm sorry that it's not happening still, is when Ed Blondin opened up that garden thing,
For tourist
gardenscape thing.
gardens.
I mean, that was my idea, frankly. And I pitched it to the Cernhaus. Rob Crockmall was their leasing agent, I believe, still. And he shopped around and told me he couldn't find anyone. And then but I know Ed runs a landscaping company. And so I asked him if he'd be interested, and I put them all together. And I think it lasted 2 or 3 years. I
It
think
won
in
an
co-
award too.
What's that?
It won an award too. I think.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. It lasted a couple years, and I think COVID killed it. So that's anyway. That was I really, I'm not going to take credit for the success of it, but it was my concept, and that's again, that's a rip off and duplicate situation. R&D. Though that's to me the original pop up are those garden centers. They are all over the place, all over in parking lots and all over mid Michigan and elsewhere, or central. Excuse me, I grew up in mid Michigan, all over Metro Detroit and elsewhere. It's just a matter of taking that idea and of being able to apply it here. Anyway, okay, thank you for that question.
Okay, I'm gonna break this up.
Oh, good.
It's a long one. So please provide an instance where you had a challenging or low performing employee. What was the issue and what specific steps did you take to help improve the employee's performance? And I'll just add this one. Did the employee's performance increase after your actions? And I'll ask the second one. If you don't, or-
I have a small office of 4 people, and I haven't had in 4 years, and I have not had to deal with that situation. So this is the second time I've answered you specifically with a question, with a non-answer. But I have not had to deal with that in my recent, in the last 4 years of being a village administrator. When I worked here, I didn't have employees. So I was an employee. So I can't draw on that experience. I would have to go back to when I was a managing editor of the newspaper I mean, there are going to be underperforming reporters, and with steady coaching and guidance, an employee can become a better employee. There are also training offerings that were at that time offered by the MPA, the Michigan Press Association. Costs some money, but sometimes it's money well spent. There are several instances I can tell you where I would have underperforming reporters who were not putting out the column inches. That's how we measure things in the newspaper world. Weren't putting out the number of column inches that were necessary, and we needed more production out of them. Then there was another reporter that was just not getting the gist of, despite journalism school, the gist of how to be a reporter, how to write an article and succinctly to cover the who, what, where, when, why, and how. Just wasn't able to do that. So that was almost a remedial situation, but it worked. And I can tell you that those, again, it's steady, sure coaching and encouragement. No, but it's kind of like having a dog. It's going to take some time. You don't just pour water on it and have an instant dog. I mean, if you want to train a dog, it's going to take time. And I'm not trying to equate people with dogs, but you got to realize that going into this, that if the situation is something that has to be built on, that it's not going to be done overnight.
Thank you. I think that kind of answers the second part.
I'd like to hear the second part.
Okay.
It's kind of a different situation.
Please provide an example where employees strongly disagreed on the solution approach to an issue, and how did you specifically handle the situation and bring the group to a consensus?
Well, with removing group from consensus thing, I mean, that employees that disagree, journalists are, I will say this, journalists are smart people, generally speaking, and sometimes headstrong, and sometimes their way is the best way. Well, when you're working in a newspaper environment, that's not the case. The best way is the way we're telling you as editors. The best way follows the Associated Press guide, which is available to anybody. And so there's push there in those instances. There was pushback by the employee, but again, steady hand, steady encouragement, steady guidance. I never had to fire anybody in that situation, in that environment, but people did leave voluntarily after some time. So I can only assume that they didn't agree with the policies that we were trying to implement. Thank you.
Oftentimes, the city manager will have to deal with the media. Please provide us with a situation, please provide us with an example of how you have effectively used the media in the past. What was the situation? How specifically did you interact with the media? And in what forms? Was it print, television, radio, or etc.? And what was the result of the interaction? And then there's a follow-up to it.
Okay. I can say that I've never been on television or on the radio in my present position. I've only been quoted in newspapers. And usually the call comes in and I answer the questions as succinctly and as well as I possibly can. I always relish those opportunities to say, I used to work in newspapers, and then kind of break the ice a little bit. And maybe use off the record for context and provide a little background that doesn't necessarily need to be part of a quote. I've never really had any issues communicating with journalists being one myself at one time. Maybe I'm sure that helped.
And the follow-up is, social media has become both an important, sometimes controversial means of communication to a city's residents. Please provide an example of how you have used social media in the past to effectively communicate with the city's residents, and how did it work out?
Well, I can say this, Bingham Farms does not have an official Bingham Farms, Village of Bingham Farms Facebook page. We don't have that. So that means that, and I'm not on their next door. I mean, you know, every community has a next door. I think you have to live there to live in an area or near an area to be part of it. I'm not on their next door page. So that means that most of the communication online is done through the village website, which I maintain. And there's all kinds of little village news and postings about meetings. We post everything on the website. It's where we store documents for the public consumption, minutes, meeting minutes, public notices, plans for things. That seems to work pretty well. We have something called Gov Delivery, a service that we pay for, and that allows us to distribute emergency messages as well as like our newsletter, things of that nature. That seems to go pretty well. I know that this community has a Facebook page. To be quite honest with you, I haven't really thought about how I would handle that if I were to work here. I would like to maintain a neutral presence, I guess, of some kind, but I mean, you don't want a city administrator spending all day on social media, I hope.
Okay. Please describe your communication style in detail and specifically how you will communicate and keep the mayor and city council informed.
I learned this strategy from Cheryl Mitchell. I write a weekly memo to the council. If the week doesn't end on Friday because of a day off or holiday or something like that, it goes out earlier, of course. But at the end of the week, I write a weekly memo to keep everyone apprised of things that happen, whether it's water main breaks, fires, things that are happening within the office that they need to know about, vacations or folks leaving, that kind of thing. So council, I work on this, no surprises. I just don't want people, I mean, there's always a first time to hear something. So I'm not calling that a surprise, but I don't want something to be going on and I don't want folks to not hear about it from me. So there are no surprises, and that weekly memo, I think, is a pretty good service. And I got to say, I don't know that Cheryl's predecessors did that at all, but I took that and ran with it.
Does it go to everyone?
Council, yeah, and yeah, well, that's a good question. It goes to council and it goes to
I just
my
meant
staffers,
all
too.
council members.
Yes, that's definitely.
Thank you, not just in
Yeah,
a couple. Okay, thank you.
right.
Well, thank you very much. I think that what we can do is give you a couple of minutes to close. If you want to tell us anything else that you think might be, whatever you would like to share.
Well, there are a couple of things that I think that are important. And that is that there's a lot of shared similarity between this community and where I work in terms of personalities of people and contractors. And I'll just go over them real quickly. Water Resource Commissioner's Office maintains the tank. Is that accurate? Okay. So the same group, the same intergovernmental relation maintains our sewer and water system. So I'm very familiar with those folks. Giffords Webster is your planner and engineer, and they do planning services. They handle planning services for Bingham Farms. Bingham and Lathrup are both members of SACWA, the Water Authority. Bingham is not a member of SACRA, the Resource Recovery Authority, but we do have an arrangement through contract with SACRA for recycling of household hazardous waste. Our residents regularly take things over there. I know Jeff McKean very well through here, because I was this community's trustee to the SACWA and SACWA boards for a while. So those are a handful. I guess other ones would be the city of Southfield. You do your library, you have your library service through the city of Southfield, as well as your fire. In my case, in Bingham's case, I should say it's the building services. I dealt with Fred Zorn quite a bit, and he and I are very friendly. Let's see, the revise contract for the website is something else I'm very familiar with. Drawing upon my relationship or my experience working for this community in the past, and I'm allowed to hit the ground running if I were to be brought in. There will be some learning, definitely, but a lot of it will be just refamiliarizing myself with things. I think that, I'm not sure how often this situation comes up where a former employee applies to be the administrator of a community he used to work in, but I find that to be an asset. So I guess in closing, I'll just say that it was good to see you all. And no hard feelings. I like where I work today. I really do. But I would love the opportunity to move back here and to work here again. It's a great place. You learn to love the place when you work at it and work in it. And I would love to be able to love the opportunity to come back. Again, if this doesn't work out, no hard feelings. I like what I do now, where I do, and where I do it. So I guess that's it.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.